Welcome to Module 6, What Bugs Your Dog? So here we're going to be talking about vaccinations, parasites, and other pests, fleas and ticks, what to do about them. So the most important thing to remember is to have a resilient dog. That is the whole purpose of this course. A daily healthy dog foundation. You remember that checklist we had of 6 items. Making sure that is being built upon day in and day out so that the dog has a strong mineral reserve, access to fresh and live foods, daily exercise to stimulate the lymphatic system and digestion. These are the things that strengthen the dog's immune system and makes the dog a bad host to pests and parasites and helps them to have a healthy immune response after vaccination and an immune response that lasts over time so they don't need to be repeatedly vaccinated again and again. So vaccination is kind of a controversial topic, and the reason is that there are benefits and also drawbacks to vaccination. It does effectively prevent some life-threatening conditions. So there's some very important vaccines that have saved dogs' lives and prevent some very, very serious illness. Distemper and parvovirus are 2 examples of really horrible diseases that are easily controlled with a vaccine, are especially dangerous for puppies, and so that's why it's recommended that puppies receive vaccination for those diseases. Rabies is another disease that you really don't want to mess with if your dog is exposed to wildlife and livestock and other dogs and animals. However, at the same time, over-vaccination may weaken the immune system. Vaccines may have added ingredients that may compromise some of the systems in dogs, some of the tissues. And not all vaccines are effective in preventing disease. So no vaccine is 100% guaranteed to prevent a disease. Often what happens if the dog catches the disease is they have a milder form of it, so it's not fatal. And then disease symptoms are sometimes suppressed by vaccination. So a dog will catch a disease, the vaccination that he received as a puppy prevents that disease from expressing itself, and then later on it may trigger an autoimmune condition or another set of symptoms that comes out later in their adult life. So there's certainly a lot of things to consider, a lot of pros and cons to vaccination. And this is something that you definitely want to have a conversation with your veterinarian about. Some considerations when you have that conversation with your veterinarian. First, you can take a very conservative approach. So administering the most important vaccines to puppies at the recommended age, but at sensible intervals. So that might mean making more appointments at the vet's office for the vaccination rather than having multiple vaccines given on the same day. And that just allows the puppy's body time to have a proper immune response and to process the contact that they had with that live or weakened or killed virus in the vaccine. A modified vaccine schedule. So I recommend that puppies are vaccinated as the vet considers it to be necessary, but then maybe not doing it annually as adults. So you can take titers to measure the immune response that they've developed against certain diseases. Asking your vet for a count of titers will let you know if the dog has continued immunity against something that you vaccinated for or if he needs to be revaccinated. You can also supply your puppy or your dog with extra whole food vitamin C a week before and a week after vaccination to help support the immune system and to help with detoxification. Chlorella and milk thistle, again, support detoxification after vaccination, and they're just wonderful supplements to include on a daily basis to help with detox in general. We've already talked about that. Consider your pet's age, exposure, health, and risk factor before you vaccinate. So, for example, when my older dog Chipper was dealing with lymphoma, that was not a time to add the stress and burden to his body of receiving vaccination. He was already dealing with something pretty serious. And again, he wasn't a young puppy. He'd had exposure in his life, likely to some of these diseases already, was likely possibly vaccinated as a young dog. And so it just wasn't the time for boosters when he was focusing on healing something a little bit bigger in his body. So one thing you can do as a pet owner is offer your pet homeopathic support after vaccination. There's no guarantee that this is going to prevent vaccine injury or prevent adverse reactions, but it is something that you can do that may support their system on a homeopathic energetic level to just integrate the vaccine better. And these are perfectly safe. So the worst thing that can happen with homeopathics is nothing. Homeopathic thuja at 30C can be given just one pellet away from food for 7 days after vaccination, just to support the immune system, and that can also help with any swellings at the site that they received the vaccination. And then a combination of Nux vomica and arsenicum at 30C each. You can give one pellet of each away from food for 7 days to stimulate the action of the liver and the kidneys in detoxification. So this is just something you can do at home as a dog owner to help support your dog and to make you feel better about vaccination choices. So parasites are a reality. They're a part of our world, and it's something that dogs do pick up. Dogs love to eat gross and interesting things that they find, as we all know. And the secret to parasite resistance is a strong mineral base. So a weakened, compromised immune system makes a welcome environment for fleas and parasites. The focus should be on building, again, your dog's daily foundation and keeping him strong. So you'll find that if your dog has a strong foundation, he's naturally more resistant to parasites. He'll have low to no egg counts in his fecal samples, and he won't be having symptoms. He just won't be a good host for the bad bugs. So you need to assess the risk versus the benefit in this situation as well. You need to ask yourself, does my dog live in an urban environment and stay on a leash, walking down the sidewalk, or do we frequently go hiking or camping in the deep woods? Does he attend a doggy daycare? Does he regularly play and engage with other dogs? Does he come into contact with other livestock or domestic animals? All of these considerations can help you determine a good preventative protocol for parasites and for fleas and ticks. So here are some tips for dealing with fleas. You should, of course, start by feeding the best diet possible because that makes the dog an unwelcome host for fleas. You can vacuum rugs and launder bedding frequently because that's where flea eggs like to harbor and hide. You can apply flea repellent prior to outside time, and I'll give some recipes for homemade flea repellents. So that's not going to be a topical pesticide that's applied to the dog's skin. This is something like a spray or a bandana that your dog can wear while they're going outside, and it's like a shield around the dog and repels the fleas from getting on them in the first place. Those topical pesticide treatments work by killing the pests when they actually bite the dog. You should groom and bathe your dog regularly, so it's a really good idea to invest in a flea comb to check your dog over after outside time. That's one of the best preventative measures. It does take time. It takes time out of your life and your schedule, but the best thing is to catch the bugs as soon as they get onto the dog and not to let them set up camp. I strongly suggest trying topical deterrents over the topical pesticides as your first line of defense. Now, again, this is something that you want to consider if you're going into the deep woods where there's known tick infestations and it's a really bad year and you're concerned about Lyme disease, which can also be transferred to people, then you may want to talk with your veterinarian about using a topical pesticide treatment. And then you can bring in those supplements and detox protocols to help support your dog through that time. And then highly effective prevention includes collars and sprays. And again, anything done regularly is going to be more effective. And it does take a few more moments out of your day when you're planning to go outside and exercise and play with your dog, but it's well worth the benefits. Dealing with ticks is somewhat similar. You start by feeding the best diet possible. You want to apply tick repellent or deterrent prior to outside time. You're going to check for ticks after time spent in the woods or fields. So it's best to check for ticks to get them brushed off or removed from the dog before they have a chance to attach. So ticks have to be attached for a certain amount of time to transmit Lyme disease. So the best preventative is to search all over your dog for those little ticks and to remove them before they can get a hold. Keep the vegetation cut short around your house. So long, tall grass, long, drooping shrubs, and the branches of drooping trees is where ticks like to hang out and how they fall onto their hosts, onto dogs and other mammals. You can also use diatomaceous earth in small amounts around your property, and that is food grade diatomaceous earth is what I recommend, and it can harm the exoskeletons of certain insects and weaken them and possibly even kill them so that they're not able to attach to your dog. Natural prevention can also include collars, bandanas, and sprays. Now these would be deterrent sprays. And you can rotate natural deterrents with chemical preventatives. So again, depending on the environment that you're going into and the risk factor, you can kind of use a combination of both. So when dealing with parasites, again, you want to start by feeding the best diet possible, making sure that that diet is low in carbohydrates that are starches or sugars because internal worms and parasites love to feed on those things. You may consider giving your dog herbal anti-worm preparations, and again, I'll make some recommendations for those in a separate attached PDF document. You can feed pumpkin seeds, papaya seeds, and raw carrot. These are 3 ingredients that parasites really dislike and make an uncomfortable environment for them inside of your dog. You want to limit your dog's exposure to fecal matter and also pick up dog droppings on your property, in your yard, wherever your dog frequents on a daily basis or a weekly basis to keep them out of contact with those so they're not constantly reinfesting themselves with parasites. So here's an example of a do-it-yourself pest spray, and these ingredients can be bought at some grocery stores, health food stores, definitely online. It's 1/4 cup of aloe vera, 1 cup witch hazel, a teaspoon of neem oil. Neem is a great oil from a plant that has a lot of antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal, and antiparasitic properties. And then a teaspoon of vanilla extract that actually helps to emulsify and suspend the neem oil in the witch hazel. And here is a recipe to make your own pest collar. This is kind of fun. So you get 10 drops eucalyptus oil, 10 drops geranium oil, 5 drops lavender oil, 5 drops of cedar oil, and you're going to mix them all together in a little glass bottle, and then you apply 5 to 10 drops to a cotton bandana, or you can get a cotton rope or a nylon collar and put the drops on there. And then you let your dog wear this collar while they're outdoors, and you store it in an airtight container and refresh the drops each time you're going to go ahead and use it again. So your dog gets to look a little bit stylish with the cute bandana on, and the oils help to create a barrier repellent against pests. There's a couple products I really like that I found also do a great job with fleas and ticks, and I'm going to make a PDF where I recommend those products in a separate document, but there are some natural alternatives out there that I've found are very effective without the harmful chemical pesticides. Okay, so in conclusion, there are some questions to ask yourself and definitely a conversation to have with your veterinarian around vaccination and parasite, flea, and tick control. You need to ask yourself, does your dog already have any underlying medical issues? Do you live in a low, medium, or high risk area for pests and diseases? If it's medium or high, how often is the exposure? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it just once a month? And that can help you determine the type of preventative protocol that you want to use. Are you willing to regularly check for pests on your dog? So if you're not willing to take the time to brush them and groom them and check them over for ticks and fleas, then you may want to consider a chemical preventative. And do you have a detox protocol ready in case you choose to do the chemical preventative, the pesticides and the herbicides or the pesticides? And you can look back in the supplements module for some ideas on the daily detox protocols that you can use to support your dog.